So I've seen it said a lot of times that the number one rule to getting better at jiu-jitsu, the number one rule, right, is just showing up. And, you know, I've come to, I may have even said that at some point, but I think it's wrong. And if it's not wrong, it's at the very least incomplete. I'll draw a parallel with you to kind of get my point across. If you're old enough to have had a job, because I know we have some young people on this channel who maybe aren't working yet, but anybody, for the most part, who's had a job has probably worked with a coworker who just showed up. They didn't take pride in their work. They didn't take the pride of just doing a good job for a good job's sake. And you probably didn't like working with that person because they probably were doing the bare minimum and they would leave you hanging at any point, right? Meanwhile, you probably had other coworkers who you knew were going to do a good job of their work. They were going to push the extra mile, and they showed up with purpose. And that's kind of the difference that you have to think about with jiu-jitsu. You can just show up and you'll probably be okay. But when I talk to my students and when I talk to you guys through the questions and stuff like that, nobody comes into this stuff and says, you know what? I just want to be mediocre. Everybody kind of has this idea that I want to be the best possible grappler that I can be. Now, we all understand that we may not be a 20-year-old black belt world champion or anything like that, but we still want to be the best possible grappler that we can be, right? And if you want to make that happen, you can't just show up. You have to show up with purpose. Like when I think about my students, the ones that have done the best, who have progressed the fastest, who have accomplished the most. When I think about my friends that are really badass grapplers and the ones that are really good, some of these include world champions. And even in my own experience, when I've progressed the fastest, one of the common threads that runs through that is showing up with purpose. Like my students that progress the fastest, I can always come up to them and say, hey, what technique or position are you working on? Boom, they can rattle it off just like that. Same thing with my friends in grappling who are really good, you know, talking to them about their training practices. One of the things that they said was always true is that they were always hunting after something. They weren't just showing up, they were hunting after particular techniques and positions. And even me, sometimes it's not just about the technique or the position, but what do I want to get out of this training session, right? What do I want to accomplish from this? And sometimes for some of you guys, depending on where you're at, that doesn't even have to be a successful submission. Some of you guys are just getting started. This could simply be finish up the whole session without taking a break. Or maybe you're getting smashed in side control and you tap out because you feel like you can't breathe. It can simply be, don't tap to side control pressure. There's all these little goals that you can give yourself and all these little things that you can add to give yourself something to focus on in your training session. But my encouragement is to you, because I always get messages about like, hey, Chewy, how do I improve? How do I get better at jiu-jitsu? One of the number one rules that I would share with you is to not just show up, but show up with purpose. Now, a little caveat to that is that you don't have to have every session that you do. You don't always have to have a particular goal because sometimes that can be tough. But if you're trying to get better and you maybe feel like you're hitting a skill plateau or you're really trying to get better at something, then I would encourage you, don't just show up, but show up with purpose.